Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Duterte. Thanks so much for joining us. Lawmakers are heading home for a 2-week recess after a historic week on Capitol Hill. It will be the first time many Democrats will hear from their constituents directly about the impeachment inquiry they launched against President Trump earlier this week. A new poll finds the nation is split over the matter, with 49% approving and 46% disapproving. Yesterday, the president's acting director of national intelligence spent hours answering questions from members of Congress about the whistleblower complaint at the center of this impeachment inquiry. Nancy Cordes is on Capitol Hill with more insight into yesterday's hearing and what comes next.
Well, there are several new names in this whistleblower report, and so congressional investigators will be working to line up interviews with those people over the 2-week recess. And Democrats really see this time at home as valuable because they are looking to get the polls on impeachment up, so they need to make the case directly to their constituents.
This whistleblower has given us a roadmap for our investigation.
Democrats say this 9-page whistleblower report has handed them their strongest case yet for impeachment. Some hope to vote by the end of this year. At a 3-hour hearing, acting director of national intelligence Joseph Maguire called the whistleblower's complaint credible.
I think the whistleblower did the right thing. I think he followed the law every step of the way.
The whistleblower describes conversations with more than half a dozen U.S. officials who were deeply disturbed by the president's foreign phone call in which he sought to pressure the Ukrainian leader to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden. Some Republicans were troubled, too.
I want to say to the president, this is not okay. It isn't, that conversation is not okay.
But it's what the whistleblower says happened in the days following the call that has rocked Capitol Hill. Quote, senior White House officials intervened to lock down all records of the phone call, removing a summary of the conversation from the normal computer system and storing it in a classified system where few people would see it. According to White House officials, this was not the first time.
This is a cover-up. This is a cover-up.
Many Republicans questioned the whistleblower's claims.
I think the most immediate concern I have is it's not based on firsthand knowledge. In other words, he says he heard this from other people.
But the Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee is now investigating the scandal, too, and grilled Maguire behind closed doors on Thursday.
This will generate more questions than we asked today.
For more on this, we are joined by CBS News White House correspondent Paula Reid, and alongside her is CBSN legal contributor and former district attorney Rebecca Roiphe. Good to see you both.
Great to be here.
Happy Friday. All right, so Paula, let me start with you. Explain what sort of legal jeopardy or exposure this puts members of the president's inner circle in.
Well, that as Democrats continue to pursue impeachment, I think you're going to see the Justice Department under a lot of pressure to actually open up a parallel criminal inquiry. You're going to be looking at a lot of things. First of all, what is Rudy Giuliani doing? Sort of freelance diplomacy. It's unprecedented for the president's personal attorney to be engaging in this kind of behavior. One thing that they may look at is potential bribery. And if that is a path that they go down, Giuliani could have some exposure there. He's out there advocating for the president. But the other people who need to be examined are the lawyers. They're the ones who are supposed to be helping the president stick to the rules, stay on the up and up. And here there are suggestions that even lawyers within the White House may have helped him engage in a cover-up, potentially. But those are the kind of things I think the Justice Department or special counsel may have to investigate.
And what about America's top lawyer, Rebecca? The transcript, the memorandum, the so-called transcript that we received from the White House mentions the Attorney General several times. He's come out with a statement saying he didn't know anything about this. But the question, President Trump is on the record saying that he wanted someone who was like Attorney General Eric Holder for President Trump. He wanted somebody who was loyal. We know that he didn't get that in Jeff Sessions. Does he have that in Bill Barr? And if he does, could that prove problematic for the AG?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's already a little bit problematic because there are conflicts of interest rules. And I think that the Democrats in Congress are going to want to know whether Bill Barr went through the proper channels to determine whether or not he should have been recused before making a determination based on that whistleblower complaint that there was no criminal activity. So that's a significant concern. Attorney generals are by definition and quite frequently very close with the president and with the political branch. And as a result, that's why we have these special counsel rules that allow for investigators that are more insulated from the political branch to be able to pursue these sorts of investigations in an even-handed kind of way.
And we know that Senator Kamala Harris and others are calling for an investigation into the attorney general. I wonder, is that, I mean, she's running for president. Is that a political move, or is that one based on some of the things that you're saying and some of the things that are coming out?
Well, remember, Kamala Harris is the one who asked the Attorney General, have you ever been asked by the president to investigate someone? Bill Barr couldn't answer. He's a smart guy. It's not a tough question. That's one of the things we were going to ask the president about at his press conference, but he only took 4 questions. In terms of this kind of investigation, it can be both political and legal. There can be separate tracks, but it's not clear to me who legally would investigate the Attorney General.
All right. So let's talk about the whistleblower complaint that we all received yesterday. The New York Times is reporting that the White House was aware that the whistleblower was a CIA officer, even though that person is supposed to remain anonymous. There were a lot of things that were strange about this, including the fact that the acting DNI walked this whistleblower complaint over to the White House when the White House was at the center of the complaint, as opposed to taking the necessary steps to bring it to Congress.
Well, that is unusual. And we heard former acting CIA Director Mike Morrell earlier say that's not the procedure. But I have heard the other side of this. And the administration argues that, look, anytime an official sees questions about executive privilege, they're likely going to want to loop in the White House. So there's 2 sides to that. But there is this question overall about possible obstruction. It was Bill Barr. It was the White House. They were the ones trying to block these allegations from getting to Congress. And if they were assisted by lawyers within the White House in moving evidence to places it would be hard to get at, a lot of questions about whether this was actually legal.
You know, Rebecca, I asked the former deputy director of the CIA, Mike Morrell, about this whistleblower, and he calls him a hero. He says that he did everything right and he should be commended, not dragged through the mud the way some partisans have done over the last couple of days. The question, though, becomes what you're hearing now as spin is the whistleblower heard it secondhand. And I spoke to Keir Dougal yesterday here on the air. He's a former attorney here in New York. He says, look, that's how a lot of whistleblowers experience wrongdoing directly, but oftentimes they see something or they hear something and then they report it to the proper authorities the way that they're supposed to. And he called it a lead. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, hearsay is a rule about court. We're not allowed to use hearsay because it's a little bit less reliable in court. But that's not a rule that has to do with starting an investigation. Many times you start an investigation based on lots of hearsay and then you develop direct evidence. So you want some sign that it's trustworthy, but it doesn't have to reach the level of admissible in court before you would seriously pursue an investigation into something.
And Paula, so the White House, when they say that the whistleblower heard it secondhand, but then the whistleblower complaint matches up with the transcript, what do they say about that?
There's a lot that really checks out here, right? I mean, arguing that he heard this secondhand, this is just part of an effort to attack the whistleblower. Anyone who comes forward with allegations of misconduct, they fully expect retaliation from whatever agency they're reporting on. That's why we have whistleblower statutes in private sector, public sector, so people can come forward without fear of being demoted or losing their job or losing their security clearance. The attorney for these whistleblowers say their client was well aware that there would likely be retaliation, and that was something they were concerned about. But attacking this individual's credibility, not surprising.
And Paula, what is the White House saying about the recording of President Trump essentially arguing or suggesting that whoever took part in this, the person who may have given the information to the whistleblower, be executed? I mean, what kind of a chill does that send to somebody who is thinking about coming forward when they witness wrongdoing?
I've not seen the White House respond directly to that, but of course the concern is that if you're suggesting that a whistleblower could potentially face the death penalty, well, yeah, that may have a chilling effect. Now, of course, it's almost impossible that would happen. I mean, this person followed the law, went through all of the procedures that are designed to take care of these kinds of complaints. But pretty shocking that the president would say that. Some tactics that are certainly questionable. Rebecca,
today on CBS This Morning, former Deputy Director of the CIA, Mike Morrell, said that he expects at some point the whistleblower will come before Congress. That is problematic, and I think he was even asked about that. Does that put that person's life in some jeopardy? Perhaps not physical jeopardy, but as we know, there's a lot of crazy people out there. The question I guess I have is, and Mike said, look, this is about the President of the United States, and sometimes you just have to come forward and explain. If you were advising this whistleblower as a lawyer, what should he or she be thinking about?
Well, I mean, I think he's been really well advised, or following the process, there's been a crossing the T's, dotting the I's by the statute every single step of the way. And that's exactly what the person has to do, because the protections kick in as long as that's happened. And as Paula said, those protections are pretty good. Mostly they do anticipate things like being fired or losing your security clearance, not being prosecuted or executed, but that's just because that consequence is so unthinkable, and the president bringing it up seems almost a fantasy. I mean, it just can't possibly happen under the law. So it's not even on the table.
And there's just so much more to dig into, including this sort of this top secret server where some of the information is being stored. And Mike Morrell was asked about this, and it does seem, I mean, at that level, it starts to look like a cover-up. There's the president of the United States pressuring the president of Ukraine to investigate his political rival, but then there are questions about what people knew at the White House about what the president had done in this instance and other instances that went on this other server.
Exactly. And speaking to sources within the White House, their spin or their defense is that, of course, we had to start protecting these conversations because in an unprecedented manner, they were beginning to leak. We wanted to give them an extra layer of protection. But the question is, what other conversations got an extra layer of protection? Was it North Korea? Was it Russia? Which ones were getting this protection? Because that defense, okay, we'll see. We need more facts. But overall, it does appear that a lot of this conduct matches the initial complaint from this whistleblower and suggests a possible cover-up. But we have to remember, these claims need to be vetted. We looked at the Russia investigation. There were a lot of things that looked like a possible conspiracy or possible collusion. But at the end of the day, there wasn't enough evidence to establish a crime. But that's the criminal court, political court, impeachment, different standard.
Rebecca, Paula, so great to have you guys here in New York. Well, you're always here, Rebecca, but you are always in D.C. or wherever the president is. Thank you very much, Paula. Appreciate it.